Good morning. Do you think you might have some stories to share today?
Oh, I probably got piles. Maybe I'll just hang out until it's timely.
That's wonderful. I like piles of stories. So, as we're waiting for people to join, I like to think about the mysteries of life, and I love it when people from every culture are sharing stories of experiences they're having that seem otherworldly or multidimensional, shall we say. I love the idea that we are a spirit and a soul in a body having a human experience, and that maybe we come from other places or dimensions to have this experience and to remember certain things about what it's like to be multidimensional. And I think it's a beautiful mystery. I feel like it doesn't matter what your belief is as far as religion goes or philosophy, because um, everybody can feel it in their bones that you're a spirit and that there's more to life than just eating and paying bills and dying. There's a lot more to life, and I guess I've heard and experienced a lot of stories in relation to spirit realm topics, whether it be ghosts or wandering spirits or angels, guides, ancestors, fairies. What else? All kinds of different like mystical creatures that we might think are made up or possibly not real. But I like to be open minded to all of the stories, because whether or not that's whether or not there are creatures from other dimensions that we can see and interact with is less important if it's a fact than that it's an experience people are having, because there's a lot of people who have experiences that seem spirit realm or supernatural, and those experiences sometimes can be literal and sometimes can be sort of like an esoteric parable or a message to the person. And so sometimes the experiences people have in dream state or non-dream state is actually like a message to themselves from creator or from their higher self. Like there's many explanations for what's happening and why it's happening, and there's wisdom to be learned from all of it. So everyone's story is safe to share. There's no judgment. We don't have to prove our experiences, if they really happened or not, or if we're accessing other realms or lives. We don't have to prove it. We can just share our stories and learn from them. So I just want to open a safe space for all of that.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll jump in. Well said, Cosmic. That's a good way to start us off. I was getting in a little bit of a argument yesterday with a friend of mine about we were talking about the Hmong people and their form of healing and what they would call medicine, I suppose. And he's just scoffs at it because there's no repeatability and there's no way to measure these types of things. And you kind of drill down into this N=1 experience where someone has something happen and you can't really define it and you can't quantify it and you can't repeat it. And so in our world of rational thinking, we just say, what do I do with this? You know, you saw a UFO, you saw a fairy or something, and it just becomes, we just scoff at it, I guess, in the world that we live in. Um, because there's no framework to understand it. If you can't share the experience with someone else, but like, come here, I can show you where this fairy lives right in this tree. Look, you can see it, and nobody else can share that with you. We just don't know what to do with it. So a place like this where we can kind of talk about these things, I think is important. I definitely resonate, Cosmic, with what you're saying about it's hard to know what all this stuff is. Like the way I see it, there's a veil. A lot of people use this metaphor, and there's this. It's a veil. Like we have our senses here in this world that let us ascertain information and relate to what we see and feel and taste and smell around us. But there's a veil, and on the other side of that is a realm of things that are unseen, and we can't explore that in the same way like with our senses. And so it's like you said, mysterious. It's a convoluted universe, as Dolores Cannon would say. And on the other side there, yeah, we don't really know, and we can't quantify it, and we can't repeat it with any sort of certainty. But people who have stories, please come up and share. Mountain Elf, if you want to let us in on some of your experiences, we'd love to hear it. Yeah, it's just a beautiful, mysterious place, and it deserves a place for people to share these experiences.
Yeah, also, well said. In response to some of those points that your friend and you were discussing, the way the wind blows through the trees can never be repeated exactly the same way. And you cannot see the wind, but you can experience it and feel it, and you can see the effect of it. So the thing that's repeatable is that the wind will not have a set pattern. So the constant is the change. And the fact that people from all um, parts of the world are having these similar experiences is a type of experiential evidence. And it's human nature to want to repeat and control and understand things like, okay, this goes this way for this reason. But part of the beauty and the mystery of life is the things that are not repeatable or that are mysterious or that are only slightly explainable in a certain way. And like I said, the way the wind blows through the trees and the the feelings that people have when the sun shines on their face, like these things are not repeatable because at every moment we are changing and in a metamorphosis state, as is much of creation. And so it's that changing um, with the constants that creates beautiful patterns. Like the things that might be constant to us are also still changing. And the mysterious nature of our spirit is perhaps not meant to be contained in patterns and facts per se. I know there's people who have had out of body experiences, like while they're in bed, or maybe during surgery, or during different procedures or healings, where they see that their spirit is like leaving their body, and they can observe their body from above themselves, and then they can go back into their body. Like this is not a thing that, like, many people have had that experience where they're hovering over their own body. Even it's also reported in many near death experiences. And it's so, in a sense, it's repeating. It's a phenomenon that repeats in organic, mysterious ways. And I feel that that's evidence enough. um, but even if it wasn't, like, no harm done in exploring or talking about it.
I commented on a post last night. I saw Hayes, who's also in the room here. You should all follow Hayes the Alchemist because his tweets are just spot on, awesome every time. He had a long response to this person about the illusion that we live in. Is the world just an illusion? And I thought that was interesting because a lot of people say that, and it's like, well, what does that really mean to be living in an illusion? And I don't think they're mistaken. It's just, I think it falls short a little bit just to say, this world is an illusion. Hayes called it like a lucid dream, which I think is much more accurate. Um, where am I going with this? But it's like I could just imagine what it would be like to be around someone like Jesus or Buddha or something like that, and you're stuck in your way of thinking, and you meet this person, and all of a sudden everything seems possible. All of these doors are opening up in your mind, I guess, and you can't explain it, but you can feel it. And I think it all comes down to that feeling. Um, you don't know for certain what's happening or what's true, but you know that it feels a certain way, and it's you can't debate that feeling, I suppose. Um, and so it kind of like breaks you through all these concepts of an illusion, and concepts in general. Like the concepts are what gets your mind trapped in a certain way of thinking, and you take that to be reality, or you take that to be the limits of what could be. And with that energy, someone who can transcend all that, and you feel it, all of a sudden everything becomes possible. But you can't exist in everything. You have to narrow down your focus and exist in something. But if you do it right, I think you can choose it. You can choose the illusion that you be in. You can choose the limitations of your mind. Um, yeah. So anyway, follow Hayes. He's great. All right, we can get you up on the stage here.
When we think about the illusion part, what's really helped me and solidify it is kind of thinking about things like eternal versus temporary, and thinking that the illusion that people kind of speak of in spiritual senses is kind of anything that's not eternal. Our body is not eternal, of course. The reality that we live in is not eternal, but we are. And so that's kind of how I look at that question that you just were talking about, is like, what's an illusion? And to me, anything that's not eternal is an illusion. And then that really kind of helped everything kind of fall into place.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's like we're looking through a peephole. There's like this fabric spread out, and we're kind of standing behind it, poking out little holes, looking at these things that are illusory or temporary, and we think that that's all there is. And then you kind of step back and realize your consciousness is this vast, infinite thing. Yeah. So yeah, like Cosmic is saying, it makes it quite mysterious. Because everyone has these individual experiences that are hard to replicate and share, but we're all part of this vast, infinite awareness.
Exactly. How about those who requested to speak? Just raise your hand when you feel like you're ready to share. That way, we don't put you on the spot, and you can feel like it's happening when you want it to happen. And meanwhile, while we're waiting, I guess I can share a couple stories. So, from the time that I was young, I could sense a lot of things into what you might call the spirit realm. I could sense and hear things. I fit the description of an old soul empath pretty closely. So just being able to perceive a lot of things about people and events and mysterious phenomenon is something I've been experiencing a lot in my life since I was young. And I've had a lot of really interesting, I don't know, paranormal or spirit realm encounters. Some have been scary, but I feel like the important thing is that everything I've encountered from the spirit realm, um, I've even experienced some really beautiful things that aren't scary at all. But everything has taught me something important. So it's not something I'm concerned about at all. So some of the stories I have are, there'd be times where I would be home alone and I would hear knocking on windows, like on second floor of a house, places where people can't knock, like pattern knocks, not just like a random one time noise. There's been times where I've heard doors open and close and someone walk around when I'm just home alone. Um, What else? Well, my son has had some experiences as well. Like a few times he heard his name called out loud when he was outside playing basketball and no one was around. There have been times where, like when I was in college, I was renting this room in a basement of some people. They had a finished basement, and I had created a wall between my room and this like little family room area they had down there, and there was a curtain there. And there would be times where I would feel like paranormal activity was taking place in the house with things that I would see or hear. And during this one time, that I sensed that, the curtain blew like as if there was a huge gust of wind, blew like open. So that was a bit freaky to have happen by myself. Let me see, there's so many stories I'm trying to remember. This curtain thing happened another time when I was in nursing school. Sometimes I would stay at this hotel with a friend across the street from the hospital because our rounds were so early in the morning and I didn't want to have to do the drive from the other town where I lived. And so this one evening, I was at this hotel and my friend was with me, and I went to sleep while she was still like sitting up reading a book or something. And she said that she saw a dark, tall, like ghost or shape of a tall person or whatnot, like hovering over me. And she prayed and like commanded that it leave. And then the curtains flew open and this thing like left the room. And what's interesting about that story is I remember that I was starting to fall asleep and I saw and heard the curtain do that, but I didn't know why it was doing that. So yeah, that's just a couple of my creepy stories, but I've also had experiences where I could see angels in my room, and my cats were also looking up. And cats are really amazing because they can see into the spirit realm, and you can tell when a cat's like sensing angels or dark presences because of the way that they act and the way that they look around the room. So that's a fascinating experience. Um, yeah, I guess I'll pause here and see if anyone else wants to comment.
Yeah, I was chatting about my experiences before, and I feel like that's a good segue. I do share a lot of that similar stuff with me throughout my life. I guess I should probably, I mean, I have a couple sort of like, what I would personally consider epic tales of my own. So I'll just start with the one about how I started working for angels. And this is kind of a weird meandering tale. So pardon me if I do that. But I'm one of those people that was fortunate enough to come into this awareness by getting extremely ill. And in 2012, I was super sick, and Western medicine couldn't help me. And I did that thing that folks in that situation do, where I was, flailing, and I started going to all these different alternative types of care. Taught me tons of stuff, super essential. Um, and through that process, I started doing breath work, and I was showing a friend of mine some breath work one day. I was doing the Wim Hof method a lot, and I was really into it. I don't know if anyone's done it. Well, I think a lot of people have at this point. It does some pretty wild stuff. So fun to share with friends, right? And so we were doing a little bit of breath work, and she was like, "You should go see my energy worker." And that was one of the things, like in my large litany of stuff I'd gone to do to care for myself, I hadn't done. I didn't have access to it. I didn't really have, it really wasn't part of my world. So I was like, yeah, of course I will. And I went, and, my energy worker kicked the crap out of me the first session. Like I was crying, strange things happened. It was great. Um, and the second time I went back, I came in and I sat down, and she said, I'll never forget this. She says, you're not just here to get healing from me. Like, that we do the same thing. And like I'd always had weird experiences, but I'd never considered, like, to that respect that I was supposed to do something with anything like invisible or whatever. And, you know, obviously there was a part of me that was kind of like unsure, but it resonated with me. And, you know, I just said, what do I do? And she told me what to do. And she said, go home and get yourself some crystals and get a pendulum and sit with them. And that night I did. And I was sitting with a pendulum, which I had no idea how to use at that time. I'd like done some crappy Googling what to do with it. And, all of a sudden I was extremely uncomfortable because I was in the presence of something, and it was really intense. And I immediately messaged my worker, and I was like, something's here, and like I don't know what is going on. So, you know, here I am messaging you. And she was like, oh, don't worry about it. That's just Archangel Michael. You'll get used to it. And, you know, I don't know. It was a little much. Like I think it's heavy energy. I still think it's heavy duty energy. So I was a little bit uncomfortable with it. So it really took a while, and it was funny because they had to really sort of keep poking at me a little bit. You know, every once in a while it would just show up when I was in meditation. And one time I was walking, like there was just these sort of key times where they were really getting my attention. Like, and I guess this sort of gets complicated into other elements, but I live on a mountain, like I live in the woods, you know, like there's a bunch of forest around. And my dog had injured its paw, and my friend was over and we were playing video games. And I said, well, I got to walk my dog. And, you know, usually I'll drag my friend with me and we'll walk around in the woods. Right. But I was like, I got to just walk this guy. He's got this thing with his foot. So you just keep playing. I'll go. Right. And I went out into the back, and my dog scooted down, because he's got this cast, scooted down this trail, but really close to my place that I'd never been down. I'd only been up here for a couple of years at the time. Just was some spot I didn't go down. And, you know, we came to a clearing with, it was pretty apparent to me in my ignorance that there was a very untoward spirit in that space. And I bailed. Like, I was like, let's get out of here. And I just, you know, put him on leash and like got him out of there really quickly. And we came back to the path, and this, you know, the presence of Michael came, and this overwhelming sandalwood smell, just a huge sandalwood smell came into my space. And like, I think maybe that was the first time I actually got it, right? Like I actually got like the sort of like the level of the depth of what was there, right? And, you know, and I went home, and my friend who I would play video games with, a complete normal person, like would probably leave if I ever explained any of this stuff to him, right? I just quietly Googled random sandalwood smell, and like one of the first things on Google was just saying your angels around. So I was just starting to get it a little bit. And then I guess a couple of years later, I was sitting in meditation in the morning, and I just decided, you know, like it was heavy. And, you know, there's, maybe not everyone has this experience, but I think there's a sort of a manicness to awakening. Like there's like you really get pumped, and it takes all of your attention, and you're just living it full time, and suddenly you're vegan. You know what I mean? Like all these weird things are happening, right? And I was sitting there first thing in the morning doing my morning meditation, and I just gave myself to Archangel Michael. I was just like, you know, what else am I going to do here? Like, you know, here you are, here I am. I'm your soldier. Like, do what you want with me, you know? And I was crying, you know, it was one of those things. Right. And I had no idea what I did. I had no clue the depth of what was going to happen as a result of that. But, so, you know, that, you know, a lot of nothing, a lot of me just stepping into myself and going through the different motions and different changes of both healing and growing as a, you know, person who understands the invisible. My energy worker started mentoring me and teaching me how to work with energy, pendulums, all these types of things. So we were working together a little bit more. And then it was, I don't know how many years ago now, it was a few summers ago. And I finally thought I was going to sit down and watch that part 2 of that Avengers movie. You know, sorry, guys. And I was sitting on the couch, and I, you know, was just hanging out. I was going to have a nice afternoon, and suddenly, just it's like I was grabbed by the chin. And before I'd started the video or anything, you know, started doing my thing, just grabbed me by the chin and just turned my head out the window. And this is maybe the first time anything ever really clearly spoke to me. But, the angel was saying, hey, John, like, not in this, pardon me for paraphrasing. We have a gift for you. I have a gift for you. And I have no idea why, but my, ridiculous, cynical brain was automatically, I was like, is it cancer? I don't even ask me what I was thinking at the time. But the angel laughed at me and was like, no, no, no. And that's still, one of these things I wonder. I was like, why did I ever think it was going to give me cancer? But shortly after that, everything really, really started ramping up. And there's other stories I would have to tell to really have that happen. But that's when I really stepped into it. It was just like that afternoon. It was just decided of which I was going to become the person that I am. And that's when the real things started happening. So about a year after that, I started taking sessions, energy work sessions, and I was doing, there's parts of the story I missed. I'm doing my best, and I was taking sessions and I was working with tuning forks a lot. And I just, sort of was just beginning my practice. I was having people come over for free, my friends, whatever. And I had this guy come over and he got on the table and I was just swinging tuning forks at him. I work with tuning forks a lot, and I was just trying to clean up his field. And all of a sudden, I was just aware of something that wasn't supposed to be there. And a lot of sort of the angel stuff and a lot of my training really came together. And that was the first time I ever bumped a ghost anywhere. You know what I mean? Like I started tussling with it. And now, like being years into what I do, and, I really am in a lot of ways just a vessel for that angelic force that, will remove entities from people. And that's how it happened. I feel like I really crapped the bed because there's some parts that I missed, but that's a general runabout about how I became the weirdo that I am. Thanks for listening.
No, that's not weird. That's wonderful. I think it's amazing. I'm always in a place of respect for those of us who are willing to go and explore this spiritual or unseen realm, because there's been a lot of unfair, uh, incorrect judgments that have been made over the years for people who are experiencing the paranormal, when in fact it's wonderful and amazing. And I mean, obviously have discernment, but like, it's not crazy at all. It's a gift and a calling, even for many of us. So I'm curious. I've done a decent amount of exorcism slash entity dark energy removal for people. Some cases were like very dark and scary, as far as like the way these demons or entities were attacking the person or like haunting their space. And then again, um, just basic like spiritual hygiene for myself and for loved ones, where it's like, you, like you said, you can be in certain places that feel like there's lingering, maybe like dark spirits there, or you can even open doors or portals to these other realms through things like movies, books, objects you bring into your home that maybe have attachments. And so it's not always like this dark horror movie of an experience. Like I can do energy healing work with a client and then need to like release stuff off of myself that I've absorbed at the end. So it's not always like this creepy strange, like, oh my god, this person had, it's just demonic possession. It's not always like that. So I'm curious if you'd be willing to share more of entity slash spirit removal that you've done, like how you do it or how it's gone. I would love to hear more of that. And then also, I would like if we could explore a little bit the idea that, uh, or maybe the question is, are some of these spirits angels? Are they doing trickster type activity as a way to seek help? Because I've talked to some people who've done this angel demon work for a while now, and they say things like, oh yeah, there's spirits of people who've passed away who are like trapped or lingering in a sort of like in between place or something, and they'll like, you know, tip over stuff or open and close doors as a way to say like, I'm here, can you please help me? And then they'll do something where they'll like speak to the spirit, and they'll say something like, be at peace, you know, go to the light, you know, be released from this place, go to the next place. Or they'll say something along these lines, and then those spirits will leave, and they will no longer haunt the building, or they'll no longer be lingering wherever they were. They won't be doing trickster activity anymore. So I wanted to explore you anyone who's willing to share experience with that idea, with the idea that these so-called dark spirits are actually maybe pissed off or confused or like stuck asking for help. um Mountain Elf, do you have any thoughts or comments on that? Or I see other hands as well.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time. I see other people want to speak, but I have just a pile of experience with this, of my own experience, and to what you're saying, there really is, I think, many different schools of approach, and I mean, I could even suggest that I understand that there maybe is a potential shortcoming in the specific way that I do it, because I don't have that loving conversation, which I have an understanding of in a shamanic sense being beneficial. But when it comes to removal, it's really more of a force of on behalf of that angelic force, and they don't quite have that same relationship in my experience. But I mean, yes, I think there is a variety of different type of entity, not all of which are demonic. And in the case of even all of these types, I think, you know, like with demonic, there's attachment versus possession, which I think is a vastly separate you know, case, as well as to what you're saying, you know, like thought forms, personal attachments, you know, alien attachments, all these types of things. You know, I've come across the whole gamut. So I feel like I want to let other people speak here, but I definitely can resonate with what you're suggesting about having all those differences there.
Well, thanks, Mountain. I don't know, Cosmic, if you had anything to respond to that. I wasn't sure the hands. I think we have Alexi next, and then I. Sorry if I got that out of order, but go ahead, Alexi.
Thanks, Citizen. You know, my experiences are very similar to what has already gone on. Since I was young, and I have studied energy, shamanic. I'm a genetic shaman, and with the archangels and the masters. So my awakening back in 2013, full awakening, if you will, included Jesus, Mother Mary, Abraham, Moses, Melchizedek showing up, as well as the major archangels. It was a little scary and a little bit overwhelming, if you will, at the time. And I've experienced ghosts, entities, known and unknown, in houses, the land. Throughout my life, I went to Salem, Massachusetts, kind of before I knew and awakened. And that was quite an experience to feel that energy. Gettysburg. So, you know, everything is energy, and there's a lot of lost energy, a lot of anger, and the land holds it. And a lot of what we're experiencing now and seeing is Mother Earth releasing, you know, with the earthquakes and this, that, and the other, that all of us who are awake and aware can play a part in, you know, truly sending love, sending healing to different nations, to people, because you're much more powerful than you think and then that you know. And everyone's experience is going to be different. And so you can't really compare. There'll be some similarities, if you will. Part of the trap, at least that I see, because I am a big picture, 30,000 foot view of what's going on, is that, truly we're one. Our experiences may be different. Some of that is the spiritual trap of I'm more enlightened than you or this, that. And we're not, because basically we're just pure love. We're fractals of the divine. And what we see out in the world is just kind of an archetype. But getting back to the entities, I think it is relying on your team, whoever your team is comprised of, and in how you deal with it. And I can share, I had a best friend who died. She choked to death on a piece of steak. And she came to visit me one night. And I was probably about 18 at the time. And this was truly long before all of this was more mainstream. But anyway, my name was different, but she was like, I'm so lonely. I miss you. And she ran her fingers through my hair and scared the living daylights out of me, right? I was jumping out of bed going, no. And I remembered that as an early teenager, I would go see astrologists or psychics, and I would walk in and they'd look at me and say, what are you doing here? You know this already. I'd kind of look at them going, okay, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be here if I did know, right? At that particular time, it was a dark entity showing up in the form of somebody I loved. And that was kind of interesting. But, it gets down to beliefs. And a lot of, how do I want to put this? Exploring through your own meditation, your own interests. I mean, I'm having the trees wave and talk to me, the elemental kingdom. I'm very connected. And finding what works for you, as an energy worker, as a shaman, the angels, it's trusting your energy. But it's also recognizing that we're truly here to bring unity and love down from above. So call it God, call it source, call it universe, whatever it is for you. And for me, given that I have so many guides from the biblical sense, and tell me that's not something that makes you wonder, like, okay, are these people really real? But you have to find what works in being tolerant and recognizing that we've been here before and we've created this world collectively and individually. So you are both the student and the teacher, because all the answers are within you. And, having the galactics out there, at least the guidance that I've gotten from the galactic world is, yes, they've been here for a long time, but haven't really made a show because of the divisiveness and all of that's been here. People are afraid and they fear what they don't know. So I think for each of us, it's truly finding our path, what works for us individually to release entities, trusting the energy. If it doesn't feel good, trust it. if it feels good, and ask the questions. But to truly be supportive of each other and tolerant.
Yes,
you get to
that's really
choose,
good.
right?
I'm glad you're talking about being intuitive about it, because it seems like a lot of people can feel if whatever supernatural spirit that they're encountering is friendly or not friendly. And I guess maybe I'm picturing someone, maybe for the first time, sitting at home and having an experience manifest and being like, oh, what the fuck's happening? What's happening? I guess what I would say to people is exactly what was just said. Be intuitive and do what feels right. You can always cover all bases and say, if you're seeking help, like you can say to this spiritual being, if you're seeking help, be released into the light, follow, go back to the source. Um, and if I've opened any doors to realms or dimensions that are not in the highest good for me, I close those now. I cleanse and clear myself and my home of anything that is not meant to be. So you can kind of just cover your bases that way. Or if you feel like it's a friendly experience or something you want to explore, then do it. So I am. Did you want to share something?
Yes, thank you. Gosh, I guess I was going to say, it's like, what if they're all friends? And what if it's all light and forgotten light? And sometimes light just needs a reminder, or forgotten light just needs a reminder. And so for me in the beginning, it was kind of a really fast forward. I got hypnotized, and the hypnotist was just like, I've never seen anything like that. And it was like instant, just samadhi for like 6 months. But I had plenty of my own stuff to kind of deal with. And then I landed on the West Coast and kind of started taking classes at the Berkeley Psychic Institute, which really blew the doors off. And so in the beginning, I'd be waiting for a flight, trying to get a little nap. And these like orky looking dudes would come up and start shoving all these gnarly visions in my mind's eye. And I'd be like, what are you doing, man? I command you to sit down. I command you to look inside. I command you to look deeper. They start cursing, and then they pop and they turn into a ball of light. And so I kind of found that this was really fun, and so I tend to be a little bit of an OCD person. And so I really just played hard with that. And so that's my theory, is that everything is light, and everything, or forgotten light. It's all the self with a big S. And so I would literally have so many of these crazy looking beings come up. Sometimes I'd have hundreds of thousands of them, demons. And I remember I would just be like, all right, you did a great job. You played your role in duality perfectly. The one is very excited for what you've done. All right. And then I'd feed them all my favorite things, pineapple and Fuji apples, and give them water, and then take them into this room and be like, all right, look inside. And they would literally look like popcorn popping. And then a little while after that, I remember one of the earth gods was just like, I gotta show you what I'm doing with all these souls that you're sending us. And it was really emotional. And so that's kind of my role. Like I'm in Maryland. And so I go to my idea of a fun day is like, I go to the Civil War battlegrounds. And what I've found, because I live really close to a few of them, Gettysburg is pretty close, Antietam is really close. And so I go there, and it's like they've been blown up, or they've suffered some intense trauma. And they're almost like, it's like to me, that when I see it, they're stuck in like a loop. It's just like it's almost just like a loop, and they've been in that for a long time. And so I just kind of go, and I just kind of remind them what they are, and then I ask them if they want to go home to grandma's. And so grandma is, I was in a Hindu temple a few years ago, and this energy came in it was like the last day or the second to last day of the 9-day of Divine Mother festival. And this energy came in and gave me kind of very, very specific instructions, which I followed to a T, and found out that she was Adi Shakti. She was Siddhartri Ma in the Hindu kind of tradition. And she is basically like, she's the powerhouse of the entire creation. If she decides to take a nap, everything takes a nap. And so she has been basically coming to me and being like, just bring them home to me. Just bring them home, which I love doing. And so now it's like, that's my idea of fun, is to go up to the battlegrounds and heal the land. It's really emotional. And I'm a big crazy experiencer. Like, the one thing I would say to people, if you haven't had too many experiences, it can become an addiction really, really easily, because it's really intense. And if we're not really solid with that inner temple that is giving us our full content and peace and stillness, it's like we're going to go and seek out through more and more intense experiences, because we get a big hit from it. I mean, I can remember one night I was sitting there. I had this dog, or my parents had a dog named Timba, and he was a Rhodesian Ridgeback. And he would always come up whenever I was like, starting to meditate, and I would, you hit that groove, and he would just show up. And almost every time it was really uncanny. And one time it was at night, and he just was at the door, wagging his tail, or letting me know he needed to go outside. And I go outside, and there's literally like I was at my parents' house sitting there, and they have like a probably maybe 3/4 of an acre backyard that's like a meadow, and then it's probably 200-foot trees at the back, and there's like a big round disc with colored lights, and I kind of was just like, hey, what's up, beautiful? And it just started dancing. It was really cool. And then it basically like went off into a direction where it was like a buddy lived in that direction, called her, let her know, she saw it. And then it was a little bit after that, like a few minutes after that, I was sitting there my parents had a pool in the backyard, and you could hear, how you can hear when an animal like a duck takes flight. You can hear the air moving underneath the wings. And so this was that sound, but much stronger. And I looked to my right, and there's probably a 8 to 12 foot humanoid with 15-foot wingspan taking off in the backyard into the moonlight. And I was just like, why didn't I have my camera for this one? But I don't want to go on. I mean, I can go on for probably like a week without repeating stories at this point. But I don't really believe that that's necessarily a super fruitful thing for people. But it's just believing in ourselves, and then understanding that whatever concepts we decide to create into beliefs, they actually form the structure, the scaffolding for how the universe shows up. So we have a lot more control, and it's based on what it is we believe. I believe that we can't have any actual true beliefs and just get rid of them all. And then you get to be in the state of emptiness or nothingness. And then that's when the things really get interesting. But I get it. We've been conditioned pretty hard. But know that like everything is for our benefit. Even though sometimes things get scary, it's like the demon-y things, these big scary things. If you think about it like this, they're essentially like a tiny little bug. And then somebody takes a flashlight and shines it on them, and then we see the projection on the wall. And so we see this big scary thing on the wall, and we're like, oh my God, that's so scary. And then what they're doing is they tap into our innate fears. If we don't have a lot of fears, we're not going to really get fearful at seeing demons. But if we have fears, it's going to almost use that existing fear that's in our system and then kind of magnify it to us. And so I found that with the with the darker beings, what we call the darker beings, or the controller beings, or shapeshifters, the negative ETs. The negative ETs are a little challenging, and the fallen angels are a little challenging too. But they all help us to play the game better. And ultimately, what any of them are is a teacher. Everything's a teacher. There's a Buddhist saying that you have no friends, you have no enemies, you only have teachers. And it's a really, really, really profound statement. And so I found with the demons, when I would come in, way back in the beginning, they would come in and I would always ask, what is the match? And whenever I work with clients, that's the same thing. When I find something in there, it's like, what's the match? Because they're showing us essentially shadow ego stuff, which by definition, by Carl Gustav Jung, it's everything that we repress, deny, and suppress. So we can't see it, and then we project it on everybody. And so those darker beings oftentimes come and show us those aspects. And that's really important, I think, because we're so polarized, we're so programmed, and people have a lot of fear, and so that can really come out in these experiences. And I would say if you had a childhood traumas and stuff like that, you really want to kind of jump in and really start to address any of the things that are may have happened, and try and find some closure with them before really jumping into this stuff, because we will kind of recreate it, possibly if we especially if we get Kundalini release. If we get a full Kundalini release, it's like all bets are off. It's really, really, really intense. Kundalini is how things like Moses parting the Red Sea took place. It's very powerful. But I will stop talking, and but love this room, and love hearing from all you guys. Peace.
Wow, I can't even thank you enough. It's riveting. I feel like I could sit by a campfire and listen to these stories for weeks. This is exactly what I've been waiting to hear. Like, I can't thank you enough. I knew it. It's like I've been looking for this key or this piece of the puzzle on this spirit realm topic, and you just eloquently rolled the puzzle out. I just can't even. So I really love how you talked about light forgotten and the loops and the beliefs, and I love how you play and experiment and experience here with the spirit realm, and that you encourage them to go within, and that they popcorn into the light. That is so fucking beautiful. I'm never going to forget that. That's amazing. Thank you. And please get up and speak again here. You're always welcome.
You're so welcome. And thank you for that. It was kind of interesting because at one point I saw a quote from a particular book online somewhere. Someone was posting it, and I just felt all of a sudden, I was like, I have to buy this book right now. And it's called Remarkable Healings by Modi. She's a hypnotherapist. I think she was originally from East India, from India. And so the book comes finally, and it's like a 450-page book. I grab it, I look at it, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to read this book. And I opened the book up, and the first thing I read was the woman basically saying, I told the demon to sit down, I told it to look inside. It turned into a ball of light, So I was like, oh, that's why I bought the book. Confirmation of that I'm not a complete mental case.
No, not at all. In fact, it's incredible courage to be these type of explorers, and I love how you followed the divine whisper there to get the book, and then you trusted the process, and you opened it to the page that was the key you were looking for, and now here you are sharing it with us, and it's exactly the thing I've been wanting to hear. It's exactly the thing that we all needed to hear, so thank you.
Yes, thanks, I am. That was amazing. I know we got a few hands up here, so I think we got Nora next, and then Divine. So go ahead, Nora. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you? Great space so far. Followed all of your speakers. Really been enjoying all the topics you guys are covering. Cosmic mentioned something about books earlier, and I buy like a lot of used books, and some of them are really old and they have like a certain like energy to them, and some of them are just like barely have not ever even been read, so there's just like nothing really going on with it. But I do find that like sometimes I'll pick up a book in like an old store and it'll just have like a really heavy energy to it. So I'll just like avoid even purchasing it. If it's something that seems a little like lighter and just like, used like in a well way, then I'll bring it home and I'll just like cleanse my space. But you do find that sometimes these objects have personal meaning to whoever owned them before you, and I'll find like people will write like notes and stuff inside there, and it's like very personal. So I always just like keep in mind of like what I'm buying. If it's like something that feels weird, then I'll kind of just like avoid it, especially if I pick up something and I immediately feel like sick right away. It's just like too much to like take on, so I kind of just like leave that alone. As far as entities go, I've never seen one physically, but I like feel them and I feel like I can hear them. Or if I go into somewhere, it'll make me feel like sick or dizzy. Um, and then communicating with the dead is not something that I like seek out or like do, but I have like seen people that have been in my life that have passed away like in my dreams and had like interactions with them there. So I think that's like maybe a way for me to feel comfortable in it, because if it happened in like my waking life, it might freak me out too much. That's probably why I have it that way. But yeah, just wanted to pop in and share that, and really enjoying the space so far. I see a couple of familiar faces in here. Three, Zaldor. What's up, guys? And thanks for letting me talk.
Yeah, I love what you shared there. And I like how you talked about how you kind of get the sick feeling if there's something attached to the book, and how you can kind of feel like if the book was used well or if it, had some heaviness attached to it. And I also like how you kind of cleanse and clear the book regardless when you bring it to your home. It's such an interesting phenomenon where objects can absorb or attach to energies or spirits. And also I like how your ancestors and friends who pass through the veil visit you through dreams, because that feels more friendly and safe for you. I'll share a quick story on I am a cat lover, and I'm incredibly like attached to my kitties. And if some of them have gone missing, like if I let them play outside too long, and I live in the country, and so sometimes they don't come back for whatever sad reason. And there's been a couple of kitties that I was like incredibly attached to that didn't return. And I would just be like laying in my bed getting ready to go to sleep, but I'm still fully consciously awake. And I would feel the exact feeling of that cat pouncing up on my bed and then like making muffins, as they call it, where they kind of knead into the blanket. And there's no kitty there. So spirit the spiritual experience can happen with pets, and they can come back to say I love you or farewell. I usually also have a dream. um, every time a kitty passes away, they'll come to me in like a sort of translucenty sort of way in the dream to kind of say farewell. So that experience with those who pass, it applies to animals also.
Hi guys. I've been feeling so many like heart activations. Like my heart is just like boom, boom right now. Thank you everybody for sharing, and love hearing their stories and just connecting with all of your guys' energies. I felt called to share my near-death experience. This happened about a year or so ago, last August of 2021, I believe. Growing up, I, was an empath, as like most of us are, as we're like sensitive, energetic beings. And uh, anyways, when I was younger, my timeline always like felt like it was sped up. And what I mean by that is like time would move fast, and I never knew how to explain that to anybody, except I connected with an energetic healer when I was about 6 when it would happen to me. And she did say my timeline was sped up, and that I was like accessing, I don't know, timeline is weird, I don't really know, but anyway, about my near-death experience. So this was during COVID, when a lot of like, I feel like fear-mongering going on in the world, and just in that collective energy of just fear. Growing up, I struggled with attacks from entities, as part of like my karmic healing in the up attacks from entities. And anyways, so I was receiving pretty heavy attacks, and I don't know if this is going to be too heavy to share, but it's just raw and real, and that's just life. But so I attempted to take my own life, and I took about like 5 months worth of antidepressants that I hadn't taken. So I fell asleep on the couch, and I woke up to a being waking me up. I saw them more as like a shadow. I was kind of too scared to look at them in like the face, but I remember just seeing like their feet on the floor. And they said, hey, you need to decide if you want to stay on Earth or if you want to go. And I kind of just thought it was a dream. At this point in life, I didn't really know what I believed in. I grew up in a religious family. I always believed in spirits, but at this point, I just kind of had more nihilistic view on life. Just didn't really know or see the reason why I was here. All I knew was just like, I don't understand what's going on. Everything felt so heavy. So I turned my back to this being, and I was like, I'm just going to go back to sleep. They woke me up again. So I'm thankful for my spirit family protecting me, because they really saved me. But they said, hey, this is real. This is happening to you. You're about to cross over, so you need to decide if you want to stay on Earth. And I sat up, and I was like, I could feel my spirit being pulled from my body. It was a really strange feeling, like just like kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out type feeling. And I sat up, and I said, of course I want to stay on Earth. I don't know why I did that. And they reassured me it's okay. But at the time I was living with my parents still. I said, you need to go wake up your mom, and you need to have her take you to the hospital. She's going to freak out. She's going to not know what to do, but you need to be the vessel to guide yourself to the hospital. So I said, okay. So I started walking up the stairs, and walking was like really weird, because like I was like above my body but controlling it at the same time. Anyway, so I go in my mom's room, I wake her up. She did freak out like they told me she would. I told her, hey, you need to take me to the hospital, this happened. I just had to be very like analytical, factual, like, of course she's freaking out, but I told her this being woke me up, and they told me I need to go to the hospital. And she was like, that's an evil being, blah blah blah. And I was like, no, they're saving my life. They're one of my guides. And she said, okay. So we go in the car, and I remember throwing up outside the car. That was one of my last conscious memories. But my mom did tell me that when we got to the hospital, I told the ER exactly how much I took, exactly what I took, which I don't have that memory. I guided to, be saved. But after that, The next thing I remember is I am in this strange world where it definitely wasn't Earth, or I guess it was Earth. It felt like it was like the 4D realm. But I was with Faye, and they started guiding me. And I try to access these memories because it's kind of like fading now. But from what I remember of it, these fairies, they were talking to me. They told me that they're always on Earth, that we just can't see them, but they're helping guiding us. And I was in the hospital, and it was a lot of really weird energies because, like I said, COVID going on at the time. They gave me some information about COVID. They just said that there's dark forces that are in control, and that they're doing everything they can to help Earth, and that they're a guiding force that we can't see them, that they are here helping us. So I remember walking it was almost like a tunnel, like in a tree. And there were just a bunch of these little beings. And at one point, it's all kind of foggy. It was a really long journey from what I remember. So if you fast back to my body, my spirit was elsewhere, but my body was here in the hospital in the ICU, and my eyes were wide open for over 48 hours. And I was my eyes were moving, but I wasn't really here. At one point, they were guiding me to this portal. And I feel like maybe that was the journey, trying to figure out what I believed and what was going to happen. But we were approaching this portal. They flew right in it. I couldn't fly though, so I had to climb. And my body in the ICU started climbing the wall as well. So as I'm in the spirit realm climbing to try to get into this portal, my body's climbing the wall. And they had to strap me down to the bed. I know that because they told my mom that. But anyway, so then I didn't make it in the portal, because in the spirit realm I got pulled down as my body was also pulled down. Next thing I remember is my spirit is transcending through space, and I'm then with these, I called them creator beings, and there were quite a few of them. I just remember a pure feeling of bliss and peace, and I still had a lot of fear, and I think they were just trying to guide me back to just that feeling of peace. And what they told me was that I have a mission on Earth, and that they understand there's a lot of fear and a lot of heaviness, but to just trust and have faith. And I told them, I'm so worried about money though. I'm a Capricorn, so that kind of I guess makes sense. I'm with these creator beings, and I'm telling them I'm still fearful of money. But they told me, as long as you believe and have this trust, knowing that whatever you believe in, you can create. That the cosmic force is within me, and that I can manifest it into this material Earth experience. So yeah, that really and then I woke back up in the hospital, and it took me about a year to really fully process that experience. I mean, everything just kind of ramped up as I started understanding who I am, and why I'm here. And yeah, but that was my near-death experience. I obviously have a lot more other stories, but that was just the main one I felt called to share. And just as I said, I'm new to this Twitter space, but just wanting to help, raise the consciousness and connect with wonderful beings like you. So thank you for listening to my story.
Wow, so profoundly beautiful. Like, just the raw energy and purity of your heart comes out through your voice and your story, and it's really profoundly beautiful, and I'm really proud of you for being courageous to share your story. It's phenomenal, and I'm really grateful that you followed the path back to earth for your mission here. You have a profound mission, and I'm also really excited that the Fae appeared to you. I love the Fae, and I feel connected to that mystical, I don't know what you'd call it, appearance. So I love everything you've shared. I hope you share more. I'm excited to be following you and see what happens with your life. I'm really proud of you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. Love to all of you.
Yeah, Divine, I want to echo what Cosmic said. That was very touching, very moving. So thank you for coming on and sharing that. I really feel what you were saying and everything you went through. That's incredible. Yeah, I hope we can circle back and chat with you more. Yeah, thank you. And so I think we have 3 next, and then Lynn might have just dropped off. So yeah, go ahead, 3.
Hey, Cosmic. Hey, Citizen. Good to be here, guys. I see lots of friends in the room. I haven't been in spaces for a while, but this is cool. I like this. I wanted to respond to a couple things some people said, and then wrap it together with the topic that you guys have. I think it was Nora that mentioned something called psychometry. Really interesting. What I found is that objects will hold a specific vibration, and sensitives like us will be able to kind of perceive the vibration that that object holds. And then I think it was you, Cosmic, that mentioned cats. And cats are really interesting because they have warm blood and reptilian eyes, and it's said that their third eyes are always open. They're kind of like half in, half out of both the astral space and here in the physical space. And if you trace their lineage, their genetic lineage back, it's like the Egyptian geneticists kind of like hybridized cats. So it's really interesting factoid about cats. Going back to energetic imprints and hauntings and the what this space was started on. There's a few in my research and in my own experience. There's a few levels of this that occur. So the first level is kind of like, I mean, we exist in a holographic universe, right? So the first level of this would be when there's such a traumatic event in the location that it imprints onto that place and it plays like in a loop over and over and over. And there's no actual sentience to what's occurring there. Okay. So the next level of this sort of imprint would be if like a traumatic event occurs and the spirit or entity is kind of linked or trapped in that location and has a level of sentience, right? But they're not powerful enough to come out during the day, so they come out at night. And in most cases, people who go into these locations can feel the presence of something, but they're not sure what. I wrote some notes down because I didn't want to forget what I was gonna say. So okay. So the next level would be like a sort of poltergeist like imprint or haunting, where you're seeing objects move around, and it's actually referred to. Poltergeist just means like noisy ghost, right? So in this case, poltergeists can be playful and also malicious. So it can go either way. And then the last level would be a demonic haunting. So in a demonic haunting, you can feel the presence of a demon. When there's a demon in the room, in the space with you, and you'll feel it, like the your skin will change, it'll get cold in the room, you'll get goosebumps, the hairs on your neck will stand up, and you'll feel like you're in the presence of something else. And most likely this demon in demonic hauntings, the goal of the demon, what they're trying to do is they're trying to break down the person's free will so that they can possess them. And it's a very, very threatening process and can be very scary, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, super fascinating topic. I have wondered about this whole experience of spirits attaching to people, and I've wondered, like, are demons the same as ghosts? Are, you know, are there differences, and do people create contracts at some spiritual or subconscious level, like, hey, yes, you can attach to me or come inside of me. So there's the phenomenon of a demonic possession versus a demonic oppression. And the difference I think those two are is, one is where somehow, I don't know if the person always consciously consents or if there's a glitch in the matrix, so to speak, where people can be violated spiritually, where it happens against their agreements. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a possibility. And then there's the phenomenon where the thing seems to like attach or sort of like be hovering around them but not necessarily inside of them. And
Right.
I mean, I like the idea that was being talked about earlier by I am, that you can tell them to look within, and then they just kind of like they return to their truest self, or they transmutate their own shadows. I like that idea, but I'm curious, like, is there a reason for this other phenomenon where people, I mean, because some people that have these possession, more of the possession type experiences, I don't feel like they want it. I mean, I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
like they're always like happy about it. Um,
Well,
you
it
know?
could be something that's in their life path that they need to experience, and like you said, a type of contract that occurs, that learning for both entities, for both spirits. There are these sort of trickster demons that will tacitly impede on a person's free will and get them to agree in a subtle way, and but once that free will, once they give them permission, it's like game's on, right? So I think for me, it's like you have to you have to realize that if something is in your space, you're allowing it in some way to be in your space. But what I've researched and what I found in talking to like demonologists and demon hunters is the first thing that you want to do if you're encountering a demon is figure out its name. If you can get its name, you can start to attack it in a way.
So that's interesting. Hmm. I guess I want to go down this little rabbit trail for just a second here. So I talked to somebody that I'm close to, about a violent situation that took place when they were very little. And this person told me that they felt like, I'm trying to figure out how to say this story and make it make sense in the most concise way, but they felt like a dark energy approached them after they had been violated, and that the dark energy was kind of saying, I'll keep you safe if we can like create a connection. And the person was a child at the time and was feeling like whatever it takes to feel safe and like I belong somewhere, um I'm in. And so the child even like made a marking on her skin. She made a small triangle tattoo as a sign of like this pact or whatnot. And then the child was kind of tormented throughout her life with this experience. And then later in her life, uh she wanted to have spiritual deliverance and kind of reframe and transmute and heal from that trauma. And so she prayed to Creator, please deliver me from anything that's not in my highest good from that experience in my childhood. And the little tattoo that had been from when she poked herself on her leg disappeared, and she felt delivered. And you never would have known that this had happened to this person if you would have met her. Like, you wouldn't be like, oh, she's so haunted, or she seems really like, you never would have known. She really had like this really transformative experience. But then talking to her later in life, she went through some more complex trauma, and somehow it like re-triggered memories and, I don't know, feelings from the original trauma. And she began to feel kind of like haunted again, and like something would take over her sometimes, and it didn't feel like it was from her. And she was asking me for help with deliverance. And as we were discussing it, and as I really thought about this topic, I thought, I talked to her about, what if, these subconscious agreements we make are, like you said, a learning experience, or they sort of, what if, so this is the thing I was thinking about this week. What if we have like, I don't know if this is the proper use of the word alter ego, but let's say that someone goes through a trauma and then they're like, I don't want to identify with that event. So they sort of like put that event, like, that's the thing that little me went through, so that's little me over there, and here's me right now. And they just kind of like have these two identities, which is probably good and fine. But then this, their current identity doesn't relate to the younger them identity. If the younger them identity has made this agreement, perhaps in this case, with an entity or a demon, and so then when the current version of them is like going through life, then it gets triggered, then the little alter ego of them comes out, and that demon's able to work through that personality. And then it's almost like it feels like a multiple personality situation, or a bipolar situation going on. And then the loved ones in that person's life are like, what in the fucking hell is going on? Like, so and so is not even seem like themselves,
Yeah.
And maybe it's that the entity is attached to this other identity that they've created, and sort of like quarantined off, but then it can come in. And so then when you're going to do the work to help them release it, they almost have to be willing to go back into the little, or the other version that they created of themselves, and like get in that essence of themselves, have the deliverance there, and then merge or like integrate the two identities that they created to keep themselves safe.
You
And
nailed
then
it.
maybe from there tell the devil, I don't know, this entity or spirit, like, hey, go into the light, I'm done with that agreement. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said, Cosmic. When we have these different parts of ego break, we kind of compartmentalize them and they become these like voids. But when you don't confront those like dark shadows of yourself, like, you'll see that these aspects will keep coming up in your life in moments where you least expect it and like don't want it to, because it's something that you're not confronting. In tarot, this is called like the moon card. It's like confronting your inner shadows so that you can move past in the fool's journey and continue on growing and learning. And until you confront those like inner shadows, you're going to still keep entering that same cycle over and over again.
Well said. That's beautiful. I don't know why, but it made me think of how pain can be really important for many reasons. But like, think about if you touched fire and it didn't hurt, and then you kept like burning your skin off, or you just weren't realizing consequences. Maybe we, have this arrangement with the spirit realm where it's like, hey, if I get real off my path, torment me until I get back on. Like, I don't know, but theoretically, what if our higher self is like, I don't want to get so off path, so whatever it takes, get my attention with pain, bring me back.
Can I ask a clarifying question there? It sounds like you're saying that, like, we think of a person having contracts and agreements in this lifetime based on karma, yada yada. But what you're kind of saying is you could have almost compartmentalized contracts. You could have different, like, beings within yourself or ego identities that have different contracts. I've never heard that before. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm implying, that the little you could have created a contract that you sort of separate yourself from. And also the way Nora explained it really fits here too.
Yeah,
It's
it
not
brings
so
the
much
whole.
like a contract with yourself. It's more like you're creating like these like personality thought forms. So like think of like all these different aspects of your personality, and then like something that like emotionally hurts you. You're kind of like creating, if you want to call it, like its own little like entity like surrounding you. So then this like little being is like kind of just like attached to you because like you've created this in your mind. It's like a part of like your shadow, essentially, if that makes sense.
Trauma fractures the psyche too. And it's all about coming into wholeness and finding those parts and pieces. In psychology, they talk a lot about like the different parts and pieces of the psyche. Essentially our egos are just a whole bunch of little parts glued together with like Elmer's glue or something. And um and it's literally like dissecting those parts and pieces. For instance, here just as an easy a way to illustrate that, a couple days ago I was feeling, for some reason I felt this impulse to kind of like go on a dating site. I'm single, and it was this feeling of like this weird feeling of loneliness, and I'm usually not that lonely, but I knew it was like a part speaking, trying to get my attention. And so those parts, if it's a traumatized part, it's going to speak to us in trauma. It doesn't know anything else. If we've got a shadow part, it's not going to give us a bouquet of roses. It's going to, when we're sprinting to a goal, it's going to stick out its leg and trip us. It's just, that's how it speaks. That's how it communicates. And those fractured parts definitely are important to kind of like almost just sit with them. So that one part with that loneliness, I looked into it and I felt into it, and and then all of a sudden I saw this picture of kind of this time when I was maybe like 8 years old or something. It was like a couple times where I was at the AMP with my mom at the market, and all of a sudden, I was lost and I was really scared to be alone. And so that impulse for me to go on that dating site last week turned out to be a part calling for my attention that was, I call it incomplete life lessons. It was trying to complete its life lesson, and so it communicates through that loneliness because it's a fear of being alone. I mistake it for a second as like, oh wow, maybe I should go on the dating site, and but knew that didn't feel very satisfying or really the right way. And then I just dove in, and then all of a sudden I saw me in the store, scared, and that's all it was. And then I do a technique, and then it's just me and that part of my psyche just kind of just chilling, and I'm not trying to fix it. I'm not trying to heal it. All I'm trying to do is give it support so that it can voice whatever it needs to voice. It can tell me the wisdom that it needs to relay, and then it integrates, and it's an incredible journey doing that. But I don't want to hog the stage, so thanks.
Well, I'm proud of you, and I like the way you worded that, because there is something really powerful about kind of going into an experience and then letting it surface different things for you about you know, fears or desires, and maybe other areas that you can heal and hold space for yourself for, because there's something mysterious about coming to the place of surrender when it comes to like not wanting to be alone, especially. And it seems almost like the place of surrender creates the magnetic field that's healthy for you, for the experiences and friendships you need.
So this
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Cosmic. Just really, really quick. I just wanted to mention. I don't think it would be complete if I didn't mention like the OG of 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 demonology. He was like the first magician to really be well known, which was King Solomon. You can read about. I think it's either the Testament of King Solomon. I forgot what the book is called. It's a really ancient book, but he was one of the first people on the planet to use this sort of divine magic to bind these demons. And I think it's known as there was these 72 hierarchical jinn that he binded through these different keys and these rituals. And it's a really profound story, if it's true. I know Chris has had his hand up for a long time. So sorry, man. Maybe he wants to go.
I have all the patience in the world. But first of all, I'd really like to thank you guys for hosting this thing, because this is awesome. I wish I would have come up on this sooner. Great format. Nobody's counting your characters here. It was your tip tapping away. But a lot was kind of revealed through this. So as I'm listening, like, stories are getting added on. I don't know how much time I really want to hold anybody, but one thing I'd like to to go back a little bit on the illusory aspect of reality. One thing that hit me one day while I was just contemplating some stuff was in our dream state, when we're dreaming, things are very real in the dream state, up to the point of lucidity, and we find ourselves standing on solid ground and or maybe not flying, or we meet people, we have conversations, we can eat, we smell, we make love, we do all kinds of cool stuff in the dream space, and it's very, very real in the moment. And it turned out to me that the reason that this works is that we're using, I call the mind, a reality generator, right? Or a world generator. So we're using that tool that we're gifted with, and the data that comes into that tool when we're sleeping is from the subconscious. So therefore, leftovers from the day, people that we know, problems we've been trying to figure out, pop up, they bubble up. And also the subconscious being attached to, the numinous and just infinite potential, we can pull in all kinds of crazy stuff, right? The dragons can come in, we can fly, and do all this kind of stuff in that space. When we open our eyes in the morning, we're using the same reality generator, the same tool, but now the data input switches to our senses: touch, smell, sight, and we're plopped in the world. But it's the same generator that creates both those spaces. Of course, in this space, we have to deal with the physics and science of how this thing works. There are parameters, there are things we can and can't do. But if you start to cross over those streams of data, if you can start to manage to pull in that subconscious, when your mind gets balanced, when you've done the work, the alchemy, and you're in that balanced space, all of a sudden those two data streams can cross over. And that's where we can see things, hear things, clairaudience, the visual, all this stuff. All these things that people say are supernatural. It's just simply a matter of where the data is coming from, into the same generator. So I just wanted to say that, because I think that a lot of people on this space might take that and run with it, because there's a lot of places that you can go. You could probably talk to hours on that. But I also have a visitation, and I also have a story about the possession. I don't know how far you want me to go with that.
Yeah, I want you to go there.
Okay. The visitation, it's kind of a long story, but the visitation occurred on 6/6/21. June 6th, I had an awakening, definite heart chakra awakening. There was no doubt about what was going on. But the early morning before that, like 2:30 in the morning, I was laying in bed, listening to some music, trying to get to sleep, one of those nights. And my bed in my bedroom. I'm laying in my bed, and I could see out my bedroom door into my little kitchen. It's a small studio apartment. So I can see the green light, the green clock on the kitchen, blinking away. And as I was looking through the door, I saw what looked like an arm coming like from, outside the door frame across the door. It looked like an arm. And I was like, that's weird. Like I thought it was shadow play in the kitchen, and my eyes were trying to get adjusted. And I'm like, it looks like a bony arm hanging through the door. And that's funny. Closed my eyes, lay back down again. And a few minutes later, I opened my eyes again and looked. And now the arm was a complete figure standing inside the door frame, outside my room, inside the door frame. It was very obviously a death figure. It was the cape, the classic. I couldn't see the face, but hands, arms were bony and had the full cloak on. And he's standing in my door. And the only way I could explain the way it looked was liquid gunpowder, right? It was black, silvery, shiny. The funny thing is that when I saw it, I had heard from a lot of mystical stuff that I had read had talked about this blackness that shines, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, that looks like what I would imagine the aether to be. It was just moving and swirling, but it had a definite shape of this death figure. And I started laughing. I was like, oh, it's silly. And I closed my eyes again, tried to get to sleep again. Something stirred in me. I opened my eyes, and now the figure was in my room. He had passed through the door frame, and this cape, whatever he was wearing, sort of wrapped around the walls as he came in. So now I started laughing, and I had been studying a lot of esoteric stuff. I was a Thelemite at one time. I studied most of my life, and so I knew right away that I had to take charge of the situation, pretty much. And I'm laughing at this thing, and the first thing that came to my mind was I told it, whoever sent you, go back and tell them I'm not ready. If you're here to take me, go back and tell whoever the fuck sent you that I'm just starting to feel happy. I'm just starting to feel myself, and I really don't need to be dealing with this at this point. I sort of made a joke out of it, and this thing was just staring at me. So I picked up my phone and I turned the light on and went around the room, and there was nothing there. In the light, nothing. So I shut the phone off, laid back down again, and I don't know what it had to do with it, but this song came on, Freshman by the Verve Pipe. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but love the song. And it came on, and I was like, oh, I love this song. When I opened my eyes, the skeleton was there, and also he was at the foot of my bed, and off to the left side of my bed now was this, looked like a sea anemone. I can't even explain it. It was a trunk with tentacles coming out the top of it. And the tentacles are waving, and the tentacle thing, I don't know what that was, but, and the death thing are now swaying to the music as if they're mocking me, right? So they're swaying back and forth, and I'm looking at this, and I'm just like, this is, all right, come on, this is just too much. So I pick up the phone again, turn the light on, nothing. Then I shut the phone off, I close my eyes, all right, let me try to sleep. Obviously this, something's going on. No substances were involved in this, by the way. This was just straight out coming out of my head. And so I closed my eyes. When I opened my eyes, there was a third figure. And I believe it was Lilith. It looked like that. It was a demoness. She was dressed. I can see the costume she wore. It was sort of a Arabic, like a belly dancer sort of thing, right? With a little, she was very ample. She was very voluptuous. Her face was distorted, very wide cheeks, very demonic, but not evil. I don't know how to explain it. Very, very thin, slit eyes. She had a huge headdress on, and now she was dancing too. So I just started cracking up, and I was trying to make light of the situation. I just, was, come on, guys, I really need to sleep. I'm tired. Just trying to, chat with them, and they just stood there shaking, moving back and forth in rhythm to the music. I, again, closed my eyes, just told him, go away, please. When I opened my eyes the next time, the tentacle thing had moved into my bed and right beside me, and the tentacles were down in my face, sort of right in front of my face. And then I kind of lost it. I at that point, I grabbed the phone again. I turned the phone on. Everybody disappeared again. And I said a prayer, talked to Jesus, basically, talked to Yeshua, and said a prayer, asked for blessing in the room. And thank God after that, I fell asleep. But that vision was just haunting. You know, they were all of the same material. They were all in unison and sync. That morning when I woke up, I got up just kind of laughing. I texted a friend of mine and said, you won't believe what happened. Remind me to tell you this story. I made some coffee and started drinking my coffee. I was standing in my kitchen area and I got hit. I don't know how to explain it. Just sort of something pierced my heart. Something pierced my heart. And I felt like something had come out, grabbed me right in the heart center, and just went right through me to the ground and grounded me. And the only thing I can say is it was rapture. You know, it was rapture. It was something that I cannot explain to anyone. And for 2 weeks after that, I was like a fool, you know, walking around town with my head, you know, up in the sky, like laughing, because everything was new again. Everything was new. And I was like a child, you know, it was as if everything was wiped out of, like all the trauma, all the nonsense that had been held in that space was just blown apart. And I was never the same from that day. Thank God, never the same. And that was like, you know, I've been spending my time now trying to explain this to people in the community, and, you know, getting the two-head look or the puppy dog look, you know, it's the sideways look. People look at me like, what the hell? But, you know, they can't deny, I guess, the feeling that they get, because I suddenly become sort of the, you know, I consider myself the village idiot. You know, everybody, people will just come up to me now and just start spouting out life experience. They'll start spouting out troubles and problems. I've heard things from people who they probably haven't told their mother these things or their spouse these things, and they're sharing with me. And yeah, so that's how I find myself.
Happens, how like you attract other people too that have gone through like similar things, and like everyone's experience kind of helps them like unfold it. I think
Well,
that's
you know what? I
fascinating.
haven't come up on anyone, at least in my community, that is like this. I have on Twitter. You know, I've met people, friended people on Twitter who understand this kind of stuff. They're just like, yeah, okay. So, you know, it's just like yeah, so what? So then what'd you do after that? You know, it's kind of like it just, but people in the community, no. I have yet to come up on anyone that even gets it, you know. And
I
I
wanted
spend
to
most
ask the room, has anyone ever like seen or come across an entity that looked just like them, like you?
Thankfully not.
Not yet, but I would like to hear if anybody has. Let spirit guide you. Wow, like amazing, interesting story. What I was kind of getting towards the end there was, were these creatures or darkness that shines, as I think you called it, were these sort of spiritual manifestations perhaps of like your deepest fears? Like we all have maybe a fear of death or a fear of the unknown or fear of, you know, strange creatures, or that they're a representation of something in your waking life, sort of like Alice in Wonderland. Like
well,
Alice in Wonderland falls asleep,
mm,
she wakes up and she realizes that everything strange in the dream state was a
right.
representation of something in her real life. And that's why this thing caused you to go into a place of like incredible peace.
Possible. You know how I interpreted it is that it was sort of Well, some other really weird stuff had happened during that time. I had just started seeing someone who was a little bit younger than me, who had some, and this leads into the possession thing that you were talking about. She had some severe issues from, she had some severe childhood, traumatic childhood experiences. She was sexually abused and she was like 6 years old. She had a very, very hard life. I won't go into it, but I just met her and I saw this thing as, this is in retrospect, I'm looking back on the whole thing like a year later. It started, like I didn't know that was Lilith at the time, but I suddenly realized that it was, and I thought it was sort of it was like a prelude to the experience that I had. The death was pretty obvious to me. I think whether it was saying that I was going to die to myself, be reborn, whatever it was, if I had fought it somehow, fought the awakening, would not have been good for me. It was just sort of a thing of, take it for what it is.
Yeah, the archetype of death doesn't always mean like you're gonna die. It actually represents
No, change.
transformation.
Yes, absolutely. So the Lilith thing, I think, was directly relating to this person that I had met, because she embodies that spirit, and basically all my life, on a personal note, most of my life, I tended to, because I was always sensitive, a little bit of an empath, didn't know how to use it, of course, until recently, but because I always had that bent, it was always easy for me to be abused by a narcissistic personality. And I always found myself running into that, always be, to be attracted by the fairy glamour, and overlook situations that would be dangerous in a intimate relationship, and just jump into things and, suddenly wake up and find yourself in a whole lot of trouble. And this time, right?
That actually happens a lot too with sensitive. You see it especially in like the art community with like musicians and artists, like that new Elvis biopic that came out. Like he's just like such a vulnerable person that wants to like share their like art with the world, and then they end up getting put into these abusive, exploitive like situations. So that happens a lot.
So easy to twist someone in that state, right? It's so easy to manipulate someone in that state if you're not aware. But the beauty of this thing was, after my awakening, I was looking at probably one of the darkest narcissistic profiles I had ever come across in my life. But I was looking at it through completely new eyes. My awareness was unbelievably wide. I mean, I could call out anything that she did. I had psychic attachments to her. I saw things I shouldn't have seen. I felt things physically I shouldn't have felt. And I knew what was going on behind the scenes. I knew what she was doing. It was a mess. But, and I scared the hell out of her, because every time she would come to me, innocent, like, oh, nothing went wrong. I would give her details as to what went on, and she would freak out, because she didn't believe that this was happening. She was contrary to a spiritual nature. I'll just put it that way. She was sort of she was a vampire, an energy vampire. So she was pulling all this stuff, but I didn't give anything to her that I didn't want to give willingly. And it was a very unusual place to be in at that point.
That's
So
actually really beautiful, and I love that you shared that story, Divine, because not only does it show like your own transformation, but it's like the death of your old thinking, and now you have this like new view to like go about like your life, and you're like stronger like mentally because of it. It's really cool.
Absolutely. It's a strange place to be now, because everything ramps up, of course. So it's nothing to walk up on someone and just get an instant impression of what's going on, and be able to, well, you just know. There's a knowing.
Hey, Spirit, I want to ask you a question about the story, and then we'll probably get to Zaldor after that.
Sure.
You said, well, to me, it was like the first part of it sounds like a test. It's kind of how I think it. That this other thing, the heart activation, would not have happened had you not passed that test. I don't know how you feel about that. But what was this thing that pierced your heart? Who was doing it? What was it? Do you have any insight?
Yeah. I don't look. It was. There were during that 2 weeks, and on occasions after that, sporadically, there was a sense of, I mean, my heart was beating. I could feel my heart beating, but it was vibrating also. I don't know how to explain that. It was beating, but it was as if it was quaking, shaking in my chest. I could feel this vibration in my chest. I could feel a definite physical change in my body. I felt, some people laugh at me, but I said, I know what PMS feels like because there was a time when I felt like I was balancing these energies out, that I felt this deeply. And I talked to a couple women that I know about it, about what I was feeling in myself. And they were like, yeah, it sounds pretty close to that. Because I believe that alchemy is a definite physical process. And there are changes in the body that occur when an awakening happens. And there is a balancing. It's impossible for me to not see both sides of the coin at any given time. If there's a situation, I see the whole thing. It's a 360-degree view, and it's much easier at that point to navigate your way through life because, and in every good thing, there's a speck of bad, right? In every bad thing, there's a speck of good. And if you can pull the good out of the bad and take it as a lesson, whatever, move on, it's just a much richer way to live your life because there's no judgment. There's no judgment at all. It's, well, you just take from that. So that feeling that was in my heart, that I didn't see anything physically, but this is what it felt, as if there was just a beam, like a laser beam, just hitting me right in the chest. And I felt like I was at first pinned to the ground, like I couldn't move. And it just held me in this space. And I didn't know what the hell was going on. I mean, I was standing there with a cup of coffee in my hand. I had put the coffee down. I just stood there and I sort of like could barely breathe. And then when that subsided, there was just this feeling in my chest that I call it the big tickle. God tickled me. It's a tickle. And I don't think you can actually, you have to feel it. I don't know how to explain it, but if you can imagine being tickled from the inside out, it was sort of like that. So I was walking around in my space that I thought I knew, in a world that I thought I knew, with a completely different viewpoint, because my awareness had dropped from my eyes in front of my head to someplace in back of my head. That's the best I can explain it. It's like the old I have eyes in the back of my head. Yes, I do. I sit there and you just sense things going on around you. And, you can, if I go back into the relationship with this woman, that was kind of difficult. There were instances where I was in, say, a restaurant or a bar with her, and there would just be a glance. Somebody would just look, there would be a glance, there would be something, or she would say something that would just trigger, and you would just know there was something going on. I don't know how to explain it, but I would just it's like you can pick pieces you're picking up pieces of information and you're just putting them in a file. And then one day someone just says the right thing and everything clicks and you know exactly what happened. You know exactly what the situation was. So it's a really unusual place to be. I don't know how to, I wish I could write it down, and I spend most of my days trying to figure out how to get this point across to the average person about how much we're losing in our lives, how much we miss, how much information we miss, how much beauty we miss, how much love we miss, how much compassion. All this stuff is around us, and we unintentionally, I believe, cut ourselves off from it because the ego just gets in the way. And once that veil is cleared, and that information is coming to you full force, there's no denying that there's something more than what you see here.
Hey, Let's Spirit, I just want to say, I think this is the problem from the beginning of time, is how to let people who are bounded by ego and fully in the illusion and separated, how do you clue them in on this stuff? So you're not alone in trying to figure out this mystery, how to wake people up. It's a never-ending issue, but people
Angel.
evolve and they pop off the stack, and then new ones come in to take their place, and they're all alone and they don't understand the stuff. It's just
Right.
it's a never-ending conveyor belt.
Thank God I feel more and more people coming up on this. As I said, not in my community, but I find them in Twitter space. I find them, they're usually at a distance. I haven't come up in IRL on any of these people, but I know they're out there, and I know that number is growing exponentially. There's definitely something going on. There's definitely a shift. It's, if you're ready for it, it's going to hit you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to say that
go
I
ahead.
love that you, sorry, citizen. I wanted to say I love that you just let the mysterious happen and unfold, and it like changed your life. It was like such a trippy story, but it had such a beautiful surprise, which is probably why you kind of call it like being tickled by the divine, because it's like one of these things that it, it's just a wild experience that you didn't expect. Um, yeah, I would love to come back to you also, but Zaldor, did you want to say something?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Mr. Chris, I couldn't help but relate to several parts of your story there. I have a very similar incident, and I will say that this is a thing that you can do regularly, and it happens monthly. You can do it. For some people, it's during the sun sign, when the moon enters their sun sign, or when the moon enters their moon sign. For me, it's the moon sign. But the being appeared in your bedroom and danced with you, and then the next morning you had this experience, and you were, tell me if I'm wrong here, but you feel like you're so in the moment, and your perspective shifts from a flashlight focus to a spotlight where you were looking at everything and taking it all into view. Does that sound right or no?
It sounds absolutely correct. Yes, it's yeah. If I am not if I'm not focusing on a particular thing, it's like a 360-degree radar that is just going around in my head. And if I focus on something, yes, it's just a laser beam pinpoint, and I got to be careful at that point because I could hurt someone, I think. Because it's attached to my mouth, which happens to be a little caustic sometimes. And if someone comes up on me with some bullshit, they're going to get a heap load of it back, but it's going to be very precise and pointed, and they'll get the point, right? So yeah, it can be focused in and out. The awareness can be focused in and out. But the other thing that I noticed for me, and you mentioned the cycles and stuff, that I see this whole awakening process as a sine wave. There are times when I am just like cranking, like I don't even know why my feet are still on the ground. And then there are times where I feel like I'm 6 feet under, just buried, and I'm cut off. And in those times is when faith comes into play, right? I'm like, I feel cut off from the divine, but I know this is just a ramp up to the next cycle. And I just pray through it. I work through it. And it rises. It rises again. And when it rises again, it's higher than it was before. But it's also lower than it was when it goes down. So there's this constant up and down, and the cycle is increasing. But the beauty of it is that I don't lose track of the world. The world is very much alive. It's very much spirit. It's everything is divine. And I mean, I walk every day. When I walk, something tells me to look down, and there's an ant that I need to avoid. It's that kind of a thing.
Right.
It's just something tells me.
Your intuition just goes off the chart, and it really is like a waveform. And it's so crazy because it's like you can see that there's like a graph laid out before you, and you know what point you're on at some points in the day, and you're like, well, it can't possibly get any worse than this, but it goes back down a little bit, and then the next day you're just like floored and you're ready for life for no reason, it seems like.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I can understand how people can get lost in that on both ends of that wave, right? Going up to the highway, just like throwing themselves off and just like losing themselves in the beauty and the joy and just going insane. Or on the downside, dipping into depression and, God forbid, suicidal ideation, whatever. You can see how it can happen if you're not strong enough to hold the middle point, to hold the center path. Because the tree of life, I mean, it's just whacking you back and forth, right? Severity, mercy, severity, mercy, severity, boom, 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 boom. And if you can hold the center and just see what's going on around you as just appearing, this is appearing, it's happening, and you deal with it at that point, as long as you can hold the center point, you'll always find your way back to fine.
Yes. Think of it like that graph I was talking about, though. If you can always hit that middle point, the next time that trouble comes around, you'll be able to bounce higher instead. Look into the Rosicrucians' teachings and how they were able to stay maintained within constant in the moment consciousness. It really helps a lot. Any readings of those from Rudolf Steiner, they have been very significant to me. I've got this to work at least 6 times now, and it is awesome. Absolutely amazing each time. And sometimes it's not. It gives you different things each month that you need it, and it's what you feed it. It's if you feed it love, if you feed it necessity, it will always try to answer back in a new way, and it will be a different experience each time. So strange, but yes, I get what you're saying. I'm kind of like floored here. Oh my gosh, someone else understands that this consciousness thing is like so much bigger, and you can really lean into it as much as you want. It can give you so much more back, and it's really hard to portray that.
Absolutely, and the ability to maintain that, to hold the tether, as it were, and just. So it's like riding a bull, it's like riding a bull, and you're just hanging on for dear life at times, but you just sit there and you say, well, eventually this thing's going to get tired. If I can hold on long enough, it's going to get tired and we'll be okay, and it's sort of the Rosicrucian and all that. I was a fellow of mine for a while. I studied the Lama, which, not my thing. I've done the Franz Barden. I've read some Barden. I've read some Steiner. I've got a little bit of everything. And I find that the beauty of the awakening was that all of those random bits of information that I collected over the years sort of just coalesced into a point. And now when I need something, it's there. It's not a matter of having to go dig in a book to find out the information. It's just there. I just know this is the right way. That's the wrong way. You can say this to this one. You can't say that to that one. Be careful with that one. Lay into that one. It's sort of just, it falls in. And, if you're into tarot, I mean, totally the fool. I'm totally the fool. I mean, I will step off of any goddamn cliff you present to me. And I might pull you with me,
Exactly.
Yeah, Spirit, can I jump in? I just want to jump in on that. Zalder, did you have a point you wanted to finish or anything on your experience? And then I want to get to Divine and then Nora and then Mountain. So go ahead, Zalder, if you want to finish up, and then we'll get to Divine after.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that Chris really saw that if you can lean into those teachings and really try to stay with it. But it sounds like he's definitely got it under control and he's starting to figure it out. But check your dates for your birth chart. The time you were born will give you the moon sign, if you haven't done so already, of course.
Well, I'm a Libra. I'm a Libra, and I'm Libra moon, Libra sun, Mercury, and Venus, and the North Node all jammed into the Libra. So I got a lot to deal with.
yeah, but you might have more reward for that in the end.
Well, I think that was my grandfather was a 33rd degree Mason. He passed when I was 7 years old. That was one of the defining. After the awakening, when I had thought about it, I just knew I had always felt that there was so much more that I could have learned from him. So much more he could have taught me. He was Syrian, Phoenician, but I think an old bloodline, But when he passed, that was the first time I actually confronted God. And I can remember that moment that I confronted God, and basically, I cried for a week. It was horrible. I developed high blood pressure at 7 years old, very high blood pressure. It was they wanted to put me in the hospital, but at that time I realized through the awakening that was the moment that I had given myself to God, because I spoke to him directly and said, first of all, I think this was wrong to do, but I also offered myself. In exchange, I asked him to bring my grandfather back so he could be with everyone else, and just take me, and let him come back so everybody else can have him. And once that hit me, everything sort of zoomed right back to that timeline, to that thing, and everything attached itself and went beyond.
Yeah, that's incredible. Spirit, I'm probably gonna just ask you to mute your mic just because of the interference can be a little
Sure.
much when you have two mics on, and I'll get to Divine, and then we can circle back to you after we get to Nora and Mountain. So yeah, go ahead, Divine.
Hey guys. So a story I wanted to share that kind of came up so after my near-death experience, I kind of like my reality just got so shifted. I just felt so confused. I mean, anyway, I came upon this theory called quantum immortality. And quantum immortality just basically says that you think you survive a near-death experience and you continue living in another reality, in another timeline. So, and then I had a friend who had a dream actually about my son. Grave, she with him visiting my grave, and she thinks that, I mean, if time everything's a great once. So, but anyways, so after that, I just kind of was like, okay, I'm still living in this universe. I'm still supposed to be here, but and after you kind of cross into the spirit realm, you kind of, and then come back, I started getting more abilities, more psychic abilities, like at the grocery store, and I can hear somebody's like thoughts, just like a random song that I'm not even thinking about, but it will pop into my head. And I'm like, why is Kesha playing in my head right now? I'm not even thinking, just random stuff like that. But anyways, I eventually moved away from my home state. And then I eventually came back and house, and I was asleep, and I woke up to this like shadow entity standing next to me. And after like already having an encounter with, like my spirit guide and being on the other side, it didn't really scare me, but I kind of was just like, why are you here? Get out. And then I started thinking about it more, and I really started like feeling into fear about what I saw. And then I started and and then that kind of just put my whole like experience into chaos and dissonance, which was fine because it all happens for a reason. But later finding out, this doesn't really have to do with like the spirit realm, but I later found out that I was abducted when I was younger, and that my whole life I've kind of been coming from this traumatic experience and not knowing what it was tied to my whole life, just feeling like this innate fear. And later finding out I was abducted when I was younger. And
when you say abducted, do you mean like by extraterrestrials, or you were like kidnapped?
By extraterrestrials when I was 6 years old. And I can just say that experience real quick. Basically, I had a dream my whole life that it was like men in black chasing me, putting me into a car, and then they put me in a graveyard, and spirits were chasing me, attacking me, and I just was like running for my life. And so my whole life I've had just this reoccurring dream experience, just remembered. And then I started like doing some meditations, tapping into past life regression, hypnosis, trying to just recover these memories, and then being confirmed that memory of an abduction was changed into this dream, or this memory of men in black abducting me, and then being chased by ghosts and spirits in a graveyard. For me, that was me being attacked by entities and like siphoning light being energy, because anyway, so then when I found that memory that I didn't have, but I did have, it was just undercover basically. Then I found the core seed of fear that was placed in me at 6 years old that I didn't know what it was. And then when I found that seed and I pulled it out and I looked at it and I said, I don't fear you anymore, I acknowledge this experience and how it has helped my evolution as a light worker and a light being on earth, and understanding the gifts, I guess, we're given of experience. But so after that, I fell asleep and it was just like, wow, I was shocked, but just in, observing it. Then I experienced attacks from like witches. I saw like their sigil that they were doing and attacking my energy, and that's kind of what linked. I think when that entity appeared to me and I got fearful, and then that person started doing rituals on me. I feel like it kind of linked that further to that like siphoning light being energy. And then I experienced the CIA trying to remote view me, because this like the government also uses like magic and spirits and like entities to harvest light energy, because we're the real energy source for them and their power, and they are trying so deeply to not let us wake up or know who we are. But yeah, so then when I woke up, I realized that I kind of had kicked up some sand that they didn't want me to remember, and why my whole life I'd been attacked by these entities. And because when you're a powerful being, as we all are, we're all one, but that they'll do whatever they can to kind of give you experiences to either put you in fear or learn more about it. I don't know, does anybody have any questions or comments on any of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
May I
Oh
just really
man.
quick?
Yeah, go
Um,
for it.
First of all, Divine, thank you so much for sharing your story. When when contact was made, what did you perceive that as? Like, was it, you said you were 6 years old, so did you perceive it as like these gray aliens or energy bodies, or what did you sense?
Yes, so it was gray aliens, and I'd sense they I don't know, the gray hybrids, they had their plan to make their hybrid species, and I believe they were trying to use my womb for their hybridization, and I actually was saved by some ET beings who I actually had an experience with last month, meeting them aboard a ship. So, anyways, yeah, but
I've been right there. There's no judgment here. So do you also, it's interesting. Like, I have a couple questions. So, do you know if there's a genetic marker? Do you know your blood type? Do you know if, hereditarily, if you're in your family, this is a common thing? If your mom or someone else in your family has been abducted before? And also, one other thing separate to that would be another question, which is, do you ever get visions about the future and the coming tribulations here on earth?
yeah. So, just so you, so yes, I know my blood type. It's well, I'm not going to share my blood type because you shouldn't share your blood type, because that's very
Can you
But
DM it to
anyways,
me just for science?
but sorry, wait, what'd you say? I didn't hear you.
I said, can you DM it to me for science?
Oh yeah, I can DM it to you. But I'm not aware of any other abductions in my family besides my grandmother, who I never got the chance to meet because my father was adopted. But my grandmother, highly schizophrenic, which actually is signs of a shaman. And I always kind of had this feeling that there was something there with her, but I never got a chance to meet her before she passed, and she never wanted anybody to see her because of her how intense her schizophrenia got as she got older. But that was always my suspicion. Oh, and you had one more question.
Just the future, the one about the future and visions. Do you get those?
Yeah, so through my art, I kind of just get downloads, and for the future and from the information that I've accumulated just from very well sourced contacts, who else other has experiences, but I think that that we're heading towards a time of disclosure where the government is now by the white hats, the good guys, so to say, and that we're gonna release that information to the public that that there is other life out there, and kind of just seeing how that all the dominoes fall in that sense, and then going to be giving us new technology and start initiating that contact with other beings from other planets, and then heading towards like a Star Trek type future where we all are able to travel interdimensionally, and because we're all sovereign beings of this universe, we're so much more than they ever have let us believe, and they've programmed us. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Divine, for sharing your experience. Especially, your younger experiences. I'm sure that was like really traumatic, and even just like recalling that story might be hard. So I appreciate you telling us that. There was a gentleman speaking right before you. I think it was Let Spirit. He had mentioned a story how this entity kind of like pierced his heart. And I wanted to ask him, have you heard about the biblical story of like Mary, where the saint like prophesied to her that a sword shall like pierce through thy own soul, and the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed? It's not the first time I've heard. Shh, that's my kid in the back. It's not the first time I've heard people having that experience too. There's actually stories between both like biblicals and extraterrestrial stories, like Betty and Barney Hill experienced that piercing as well. And I just wanted to know, is there anybody else here that experienced that too? I just found it really interesting seeing how all those stories kind of like lined up together in the same pattern.
I have people that I work with that end up getting stabbed with a sword with a crystal on it sometimes. If that's helpful.
As for me, I guess I was aware of some of the people using that particular description of that feeling. For me, it was just me trying to use my feeble vocabulary to describe the feeling that I was that was happening to me. It was something that I'd, of course, never experienced before in my life, and the fact that the glow, whatever you want to call it, lingered at the same level sort of for a couple of weeks. It almost drove me crazy. I could see how it could if you didn't have any training per se, and I'm just talking about just basic esoteric knowledge, just having an idea of the unseen and what goes on. If you were just like a standard NPC walking around and this happened to you, you'd probably get yourself to the emergency room and just have yourself checked out, because it was It was something that just sort of turned me inside out. It wasn't subtle at all. So it, that glow, as I said, lasted for about 2 weeks, with this vibrating in my chest, the vibrating in my heart, and just a feeling of, if it was Kundalini, it's Kundalini. I don't know how to explain it, but it started in my chest. But I also had these unusual spinning sensations, all up and down my body, in my sacral, in the root. It was just always, there was always something going on, and it just seemed to me as it was. How do I explain it? It was like where I needed the most work was where the feelings were most intense, if that makes sense. And it was sort of like moving. It would move up and down in my body. And as I said, when I had that experience that I call PMS, whatever that was, that this feeling that was going on.
Kind of sounds like it was like reorienting your like chakra zones in a way.
It was, everything was moving around. And when I say that there was a physical change, there was definitely my hormones. I guarantee you, if I had a blood test before and after, there would be some differences in my hormone levels.
So you said you were like pretty sensitive before this happened, and then after, have your like extrasensory perceptions, like, are they like amplified even more?
Yeah, thousandfold. But they're, I don't have control of it at this point. It's sort of to get a little personal, in one instance where, well, I saw things. Let's just say I saw something that happened, and when I recounted it to the person, they were shocked because the details were so real. There were things that I saw and felt that were real. There were, walk into a particular space, and just be overwhelmed by what was going on, or you come up on someone and all of a sudden you feel like crying and you're not quite sure why, and then you have a conversation with them and they just tell you something that was, just freely tell you something that was horrendous that happened in their lives. It's just things like that that happen. And I would like, if I can get control of it. I imagine that someone who has control of these things, that when you eventually reach control, okay, it's a full blown, enlightenment, awakening, whatever you want to say, that where you're in that state all the time. I don't know if I would want to be there. I'm not sure I want to be there. I kind of prefer where I am now, because I can more or less, not that I can turn it on or off, but it's controllable at this level. I'm afraid that if it jumped any higher, I'm not sure I could even be around people. And there are times when I go into a particular space, be it a bar or a restaurant, whatever. You go into a particular space and it's just oppressive. You just come up on somebody, you're sitting next to somebody, and it's just horrible. I don't know why. I can process it, but yeah, it's a very strange place to be in.
It sounds like a very divine sort of tuning fork experience that aligned you with your higher self or your calling. And I think that we're usually equipped for the callings that we have. And so I also want to say, I think there's something beautiful about like the organic flow and the mystery of these gifts and experiences versus like the desire to control it. So I think there's some kind of a wonder that fills our soul, when we're becoming comfortable with the mystery of it all. I wanted to say also, Divine Star Child, thank you for sharing, because um, the phenomenon you're talking about of the abductions is very real, and it happens in several different ways for people. It can happen in 3D and astral. It can happen in a variety of different ways for people, and it's an experience that a lot of people don't feel safe to talk about for various reasons. And I like how you brought in the government remote viewing and the genetics piece of it. Definitely stay private with your genetics. There really is something there to the genetic codes, and what and why and how that works is a sacred private thing, but it's definitely known thing. It's a It's a part of the pattern that is being observed, and I hope that you're intuitively remembering and discovering how to keep yourself safe on the spirit, soul, and body and astral dimensions. It's an organic, intuitive process, but it can be as simple as just asking creator and yourself to create um, filters or orbs of protection for your spirit, soul, body, and astral realm, on all realms, dimensions, and timelines. And it's not so much like, oh, quick, put up a shield, we're in danger. It's more of just like a spiritual wisdom principle, like drinking filtered water. It's like a universally revealed law of the spirit realm that you don't just walk around allowing anyone and everyone to have access to you because it's not the highest good. Also, yeah, I don't know if you have something to comment on that.
Yeah, it definitely keeping up that protection, because after I kind of experienced that, it kind of shook me, because I never really experienced remote viewing before or attempted. It felt like for so long someone didn't want me to remember that or release that energy of fear, because for me it's like a cellular memory. Even if we don't consciously remember it, our subconscious in energy in us. And so when you release that energy and just observing it and saying, I no longer need you anymore, and I'm releasing you to the void, to the creators, and I allow new energy and new source to take place. After that, luckily I have a very good energy healer and worker, and she mentioned to me just keeping up a bubble shield kind of around your energy field, and if it has like a tinge of like purple, because a purple energy bubble, they can't remote view purple because it's one of the highest color of our crown chakra. But yeah, so that is what I had to say about the protection, and just praying for protection and kind of just consciously always having that energy shield up.
Yeah, I'm really proud of you. I'm glad that you went here, and I love the way you kind of described the way you came to peace with that experience. And I'm sure there's more to it. It's quite a mysterious rabbit hole.
Yeah, it really, I guess, was shocking, because you don't really go about your life thinking, oh, I'm sure it was abducted. I mean, it kind of all back before I had recalled that memory, I started seeing little friends in the sky, just like their ships. Not, to me it looked like a star, but the star would like move, um and really just kind of that when I started seeing that, it kind of opened up my mind. And I knew, of course, from my experience with the Fae and all that, of course, aliens exist as well. But yeah, and that it's a more common thing than I guess people realize. And it's something that I really want to just start speaking out into the public spaces, not only just in the space where people like us, have experience with anything spirit realm, extraterrestrial type thing, but that we are the leaders to disclosure and to awakening the masses, because it's not, we can't rely on some waiting for the government to do it. Like that, we can do it, and we can progress that. And that's something that I've been working on, is healing my throat chakra, because as a child, it kind of, and growing up and feeling like that throat chakra is so important, And so thank you guys for holding that space for me to expand my throat chakra, because I've never shared this experience really with anyone, but as I'm stepping out and trying to do it.
Hey, Divine.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Cosmic, to bump you
Yeah.
there. I think it's really great that you're coming forward. There is a sort of stigma about speaking about these things, and I think you're right. I think it is more common than we realize, and it's great that more people are coming forward, sharing their experience and being open with it. So thank you for working on your throat chakra with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are the ones we've waited for. It's far more powerful to be a part of a liberation than to wait for it to be the change needed. And I'm really proud of you for speaking out. And I hold these soul spaces with Citizen on Thursday mornings to create a safe space. And I feel that people like yourself can feel that it's safe. And so you're welcome anytime, every time you want to join and speak and practice letting your throat chakra feel free. I would love that. With that said, we've been going for a while now. I mean, I love this. I could keep going for a long time, but is there anything else anyone
Before you
wants to
close
share?
it, I'm
Yeah.
curious. Maybe this is a question for the whole room here, because I think Divine hit on the bigger mission, possibly for everyone here. Like Lit Spirit is talking about this laser goes through his heart, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, yep, that sounds good. That sounds right. It's not too far out of the ordinary from kind of things that I've heard and what other people have experienced. But what Divine is talking about is bringing some sort of message that resonates to the general population, the quote normies, or however you want to think about that. People who they have no map for all this kind of stuff. And it's like, how do we bring that information to them in a way that they can assimilate, they can take in, they can start to make progress in opening their mind and changing their concepts. And I'm just curious if anyone here has any just kind of general recommendations for doing that. I mean, I try to do it all the time. I'm always thinking about, where's this person at, and where can I help them go in a way that I think is generative and in their highest interest for them to go. It's kind of unique to each person, whoever you're talking to, but Divine, you're talking about getting into like a more public space with um, less esoterically inclined people. Divine, maybe we can start with you. How are you going to start to talk to people about this stuff? What is your message going to be? How do you, because, you just come out and disclose and say, hey, there's aliens. Guess what? You're not alone in the world. They're just going to maybe roll their eyes. So how do you actually talk to people about this stuff?
I'm still working on the specifics, I guess. I think just honestly being vulnerable and sharing your story, because the frequency of truth resonating with people, that's something that can't be faked. Um, I I attempted, actually. I was at work, and these people that kind of knew me, and they just started asking me questions, and I just felt like, okay, I'm gonna be completely honest, and I'm just gonna say it. And I told them my experience, like near death, and then I brought up aliens, and it's hard because people will be like, oh right, sure, okay, aliens, kind of think like you're crazy. For me, I guess just from my approach is just seeing it's more just sorry, it's more just kind of spreading the frequency of love. How I kind of start it is like ask them about space. I kind of ask people, okay, what are your thoughts about space? Oh, okay, it's wide, we don't know much about it. Well, who's to say we're not the only ones out there? And people say, well, if aliens came to us, they would kill us. And I'd say, why would they kill us? Why? Like
You're
we're
so sweet, Cosmic. I'm just like so blunt with people. I'm just like, hey, have you ever seen a UFO? And the people will be like, yes or no, or they'll share like a paranormal story instead if they haven't. So I don't know, just dive in there. Don't be shy.
Right. Just rip the Band-Aid off, I think.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I love saying that. But I like how you go at it with questions because that helps the person get engaged instead of defensive. So that's really wise and good. I like that.
Yeah, the questions are more like soft approach because then they're the ones kind of in control of the narrative in a way. It makes them feel more in control of the narrative, and then you kind of just kind of guide their questions, because for me it's not so much of converting their belief about the universe and their perspective of reality, but for me it's just getting them to question, because for me the only spark that kind of kept me going was my questions. Was, okay, well, what was this experience? There's something more. And then if you can get somebody to start thinking maybe there's something more, that kind of just has a domino effect on their consciousness, I think.
And also too, like everyone has like something weird that's like happened to them that like maybe they haven't thought about for a while or like haven't shared. So it's like everybody that you talk to has experienced some type of like spookiness in one way or another, and oftentimes they forget about it until like they're reminded of it and they're like, "Oh yeah, actually one time I did see something weird here, or I did feel something strange there." So it's very common actually.
Yeah, actually, so when I shared that story with my coworker, they brought up, "Oh yeah, one time I got dragged out of my bed by a ghost and I wasn't able to sleep for a year after." And I was like, "Yeah, that definitely
You're just
happened
like,
to
"What?"
you." I know, I was like, "Okay, well, yeah, that happened to you." So, but yeah, just getting people to kind of question.
I think that's amazing too, how you lead by example with sharing little bits of your story and like maybe small bite sizes that people can just slightly start to digest, and then asking the questions to get them involved. And I loved how you shared with the coworker, and then she told the story about being dragged out of the bed and not able to sleep, because I've I have quite a few friends in like the MUFON club with UFO encounters and alien abduction, all this kind of stuff. And people are having experiences that they're nervous to talk about for many, many reasons. And they somehow like push it aside to like, oh, let's kind of try to forget about that and hope it was a dream. But yet they know it wasn't, and they know that there's something going on. And if we can have the courage to just share a little and then help the others who are afraid of what's going on, we can create these conversations and explore the mysteries of the other realms and of all the possibilities of what we're doing here, or why we're here, or what's possible, what's beautiful and amazing about the scary stuff, or how can we reframe this. So I just want to say, like, I'm really, really proud of everybody who's in this room, even if you're just listening, because I know a lot of people who are listening were called to come in as a listener. And then I'm proud of everybody who shared, no matter how small or big of the thing you shared. Thank you for sharing. It all begins somewhere. So I'm probably going to wrap the room unless anyone has something else to share. And like I said, every Thursday I hold the space, and we try to cover these type of topics that are a little more on the mysterious realm, so that we can know that we're not alone and make something beautiful of it all.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Cosmic, thank you, and Citizen so much for holding space for us to talk about this. I genuinely was taking a break from Twitter Spaces, and you kept it clean, and it that's so important when we're connecting to each other energetically in these spaces. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for not leaving Twitter, because even if just for the few souls that you were destined to find, I would say it's worth it.
You're right.
So, with that said, I love you all, and I'll see you on the flip side next Thursday.